Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to be going over the wisdom of the crowd. We'll go over some silly examples like jelly bean counting, to more complex examples involving locating a missing submarine back in the 1960s. We'll also cover how the stock market responded to the Space Shuttle Challenger explosion, some of the flaws of groupthink, and the famous Solomon Asch experiment. We'll also include how the group consciousness that you evolve yourself with collectively influences your decision-making process. Alright guys, let's talk about the book, The Wisdom of the Crowd, and go over a couple examples which really demonstrate the taking point from this book. I recommend that you read it. It's a great read. It's full of ample examples that go through all different scenarios and really amplify the message that James is trying to demonstrate in the book. But ideally, we'll start very simple here. So let's imagine we have a jar full of jelly beans and there's 100 jelly beans there. And we go to all our friends and we ask them to start trying to guess, like, hey, how many jelly beans do you think are in this jar? Right? You know, someone will guess 60, somebody will guess like 110, or right, a bunch of different guesses, right? And you know, it's pretty rare that somebody will guess the correct number. Although what they find is that once you take the average of all the people's answers, it tends to be the closest to the actual number, if not on the dot. We witnessed this example in ox weighing contests and different scenarios. But, you know, a jelly bean seems kind of silly, right? So here's a little bit more of a more realistic and tangible example. Back in 1968, the U.S. submarine, the Scorpion, it went down. Nobody really knew what happened to it or where it did. They only had some very basic information.
A nuclear attack submarine, USS Scorpion, SSN 589, has been reported overdue at Norfolk, and now units of the Atlantic Fleet have begun a search by submarine, surface ships, and aircraft.
So what they did was they found a bunch of different mathematicians, submarine specialists, admirals, salvage men, a bunch of group of people that had specialties in their fields. And they gave them all the information, and they didn't let them work together, though. They had each one of them reach their own conclusion. So this is the part that gets crazy. Nobody yet found the exact answer, but when they took the sum of all of them and through implementing Bayes' theorem, they found out that the submarine was located within 220 yards from the group's collective answer. Pretty crazy, right? So think about this, though. Here's another example that we can transition into with the stock market. The Space Shuttle Challenger, another tragic incident that happened back in January 1986.
We have main engine start, liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
Wow. Oh, wow.
Flight controllers here looking very carefully at the situation.
One of the things that we noticed instantly in the market is that people started shorting stocks that were involved with the Space Shuttle Challenger. For example, Rockwell International's, Lockheed, Martin Marietta, and Morton Thiokol. So immediately after, all these stocks started going down. But one of the things that we noticed within the market, after a certain period of time, Rockwell International, Lockheed, and Martin Marietta started going back up in price. And Morton Thiokol kept going down. As a matter of fact, by the end of the day, Thiokol was down 12%, while the other companies went down only a total of 3%. This action happened in the market way before any official studies came out, before any directors, anybody did an official investigation into why the explosion of the shuttle happened. And after they did all these investigations, they found out that Morton Thiokol was actually responsible for the explosion of the Challenger. Here we have an example where the stock market, the groupthink, the wisdom of the crowd, managed to instinctually predict the reason for something occurring. Another crazy phenomenon within this is that there was about a $200 million equity decline for Morton Thiokol, which in hindsight seems a reasonable prediction for the lost cash flow that came to the company. They paid $7 million in settlements to the family of the astronauts, a direct forfeiture to NASA of $10 million. So they lost $40 million for the work that they did. And then they dropped another $150 million for dropping out of the bidding of the $1.5 billion NASA contract. So all in all, they lost around $200 million. And here the market, once again, instinctually predicted what occurred before it all happened. Another phenomenon of this is using the wisdom of the crowd is how do you think Google is able to find out exactly what you want? And this is minus, a lot of the algorithm manipulation that they've been doing and the talks of shadow banning and everything like that, where they've been using it for their political bias. But that's besides the point. The root structure of Google's algorithm is a PageRank system that uses the calculation of the common person, how many people are actively looking for something, the wisdom of the crowd of searching for items. And that's one of the research papers of Larry Page, the co-founder of Google, wrote about. So it's not a bulletproof strategy, though. One of the things to keep in mind, though, is that there are some variables that influence the wisdom of the crowd. Ideally, it's very important that you have unique thought and knowledgeable individuals within the crowd. One of the biggest problems is that people fall prey to groupthink. So once you get in a group of crowd, people start hearing an echo chamber, and that ruins the diversity. You ruins the actual wisdom of the crowd and turns it into the collective of the crowd. So it's very important that people maintain their own independence when making decisions. You have a cognitive diversity within the crowd, which is a lot more difficult than you think. There's a very famous psychology experiment by Solomon Asch called the conformity experiment. Essentially how it goes is you have, let's say, 6 participants. 5 of them are stooges or plants, and the final guy is an innocent participant. So what he does is he has 4 lines. One of them is line 1, and then the other are A, B, and C. And you need to find which ones out of A, B, and C are most equal to line 1. Some of them are pretty obvious, but what they do is the first 3 times they have the group guess the correct answer. And then after that, the group always agrees on the incorrect answer. And what they observe is somewhere around 30 to 40% of the time, the innocent participant will go against what he knows is right and say the incorrect answer that the group is saying. Although there are some unique variables about this, they find that when they put in another participant who is designed to know the correct answer also, that the incorrect variable that the innocent participant will say drops from around 40% to 5% of the time he'll go along with the incorrect answer. So it's an important way to find that you maintain that diversity within the group. So how does this correlate to my trading? Make sure you're being aware, bringing consciousness to the influences that are around you, the sources of news that you're listening to, the groups that you're part of. You might be in a trader group, a Facebook group, and all of these groups, they do have their own collective wisdom within them. And your job is to be your independent person, observing each of these mindsets, these groups, the selective hierarchical tribes that each of these groups form, the social structure that they have, the train of thought that they are collectively agreeing upon. And try to find diverse groups. Try to find groups that see completely different. Some people that are bullish, some people that are bearish, and hear all their different thoughts and their wisdoms of where they think the market's going. And when you create a summation of that, you're selectively implementing the theory behind the wisdom of the crowd, which is a very powerful concept.
2. 2.
The subject denies the evidence of his own eyes and yields to group influence.
Hey guys, hope you had fun and enjoyed the video. If you found it of value, help me out and hit that like and subscribe button. If you want to follow me on my other social media sites, check me out on Twitter and Instagram at Matt McGlay. Link in the description.